Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Whatcast. Introducing first, the man with a mighty mustache, hailing from just east of the West Coast, Mateo. And his opinion, hailing from upstate New York, the guy with glasses, Mike.
So to start off this very special event on the road to Wrestlemania, because yes, by the time this comes out, Wrestlemania will be like a week or two away. So I mean, we've been on the road to Wrestlemania since January, Mateo. I know you're not a big wrestling fan, but the Royal Rumble starts the road to WrestleMania.
That is awesome.
Yeah. And the Royal Rumble was in January, so I think WrestleMania is the Sunday after Easter, if I remember correctly. So we're getting there. We're close, and we've got a lot of shit to talk about. Damn it! This is fucking wrestling season on the Whatcast. So I guess to start it off, we should talk about one of the most famous conspiracy theories in the WWE. Or WWF for you old school characters out there that don't follow the business anymore.
Yeah, I was literally running through all the names. I was
What's
like,
WWE?
What the fuck? Oh, okay, yeah.
It's Walk with Elias, damn it. But everyone knows the Ultimate Warrior. He's a household name at this point. And I remember when we were kids, there was that conspiracy theory going around amongst all us 9 to 12-year-olds that the Ultimate Warrior, after he left for a little bit and came back, he was a different person because the first Ultimate Warrior died and they had to get a new guy to fill his shoes because the Ultimate Warrior was so popular. And because he just had the crazy hair and the face paint, it would be pretty easy to fool the fans.
And they've done that many times, right? Just switched out dudes and nobody was the wiser.
Yeah, typically it's a guy with a mask, though.
Mm-hmm.
So it's so long as you don't have like identifying tattoos.
How many Kanes has there been at this point?
Just one. That's kind of another conspiracy theory that Kane was played by somebody else, but it's been Glenn Jacobs the whole time.
No kidding. I could have swore that he was at least two or three different people from what I heard.
No, Glenn Jacobs had been with the company for a while at that point. He actually started as an evil dentist with really bad tooth decay named Isaac Yankem.
That is fantastic.
Yeah, and he had a curly mullet, and they like painted black on his teeth so it looked like he had tooth decay. And then after that, he came back after Kevin Nash had left, and Kevin Nash was Diesel, and he came back as fake Diesel.
No kidding. I remember Diesel when he came over.
Yep. Kevin Nash left for WCW, and Diesel and Razor Ramon were two of the most popular guys at the time, so losing them was a big deal. So they just brought in Glenn Jacobs to play fake Diesel because he was almost 7 feet tall, and he had longish dark hair, and he grew a goatee, and they dressed him up in the same clothes. And then this other guy came out who looked nothing like Razor Ramon at all, and he was the new Razor Ramon. Like, this guy was slightly overweight and didn't have the same physique as Razor Ramon. Like, it was terrible. It was just awful. They didn't last very long.
Were they really trying to pass him off as Razor Ramon and Diesel, or were they called fake Diesel? and fake Razor Ramon.
No, they were Diesel and Razor Ramon. It would have been way better if they were fake Diesel and fake Razor. That would have been amazing. I think he also at one time had a gimmick called the Christmas Creature, but I think that was just like a one-off thing. And then he came in as Kane, and he's been Kane ever since. And now he's running for mayor of Knox County in Tennessee.
Like I've said before, and regular listeners to the show will know that wrestling is way not my thing anymore. But I used to be into wrestling, and I'll never forget when they introduced Kane. That was awesome. Undertaker was a little bit authentically scary. You know, when you're a kid, you're like, well, you know, where did they find this guy? You think that that's the actual person, you know, other than his character. When Kane came out, I was like, what in the fuck is he? Yeah,
because back then, not so much by the time Kane came in, but when Undertaker first came in, like the business was really protected at that point, and they didn't really, you know, it wasn't like public. They didn't talk about it in public how it was predetermined, and you know it was supposed to be real. When you were a wrestler during that era, you maintained that, you know, it was always real. You were the character. It's crazy, man. It's crazy that people ever bought into that, really, you know?
Yeah, and it's one of the main reasons why I'm not into it anymore. Not one of the main reasons, but it is definitely one of them. And I'm sorry, guys, I'm going to have a bunch of questions for Mike about wrestling, as I used to be a big fan, and he's continued, and he knows what's going on. But when did they start to break that fourth wall down? Who started doing that?
I would say probably the mid-90s is when it really started becoming public knowledge, and then they started going into the Attitude Era and just all the crazy shit that they would do on there. It kind of was necessary to acknowledge that it wasn't real at that point. Like they would drive cars into tractor trailers and run over vehicles with monster trucks. Literally, they would cover people in shit. Like they've been a number of occasions where they've rained shit down on other wrestlers or had a pool of shit. You know, it's disgusting and juvenile humor. But,
yeah, I remember the Attitude Era when they were literally killing people, like a car exploding, and they're like, "Oh no, Triple H was in there."
Yeah,
they just didn't broadcast a death, you know.
There was one time that Stone Cold took this giant forklift, and he lifted Triple H up in a car, and then dropped it down, and the car landed on its roof and just completely compacted. And we were supposed to believe that Triple H was squished. And then another time,
That's
Triple
awesome.
H paid someone to run over Stone Cold with a car. Just all sorts of wacky shit, man. So it became necessary to kind of acknowledge that this was not real. And at that point, the whole illusion died. But, you know, the fans were still fans. You know, I think a lot of people knew that it wasn't real, but it was still a protected business at that point. And then when they just came out and opened, people were like, yeah, we knew that, but, you know, we're still fans.
So back to the Warrior.
Yeah.
A little fun fact. If you guys go back and look at old Warrior footage, you can see he paints his nipples white. It's always the weirdest thing. They're actually painted. And I noticed way back then, I'm like, what's up with his nipples?
Was that when he was the Dingo Warrior?
No, when he was just the Ultimate Warrior. He always had, like, not the areola, just the tip of his nips had white face paint on it. What? And sometimes it would coincide with what was going on with his
that's awesome.
His face paint.
That is awesome.
Every time. I was like, God, that's weird.
He was a crazy character, man. Like some of his promos were just, you had to be on acid to understand what he was talking about.
They're just blatantly alcohol and cocaine fueled rants from some musclehead. Mm-hmm. There's some of them that are just weird. You're like, okay, you're all about power and all that stuff, but what are you doing right now?
Yeah.
Why? You're not selling anybody with your heart attack during a cocaine binge movements.
Yeah. There's something to behold. If you guys have never, even if there's any non-wrestling fans that are listening to this still, if you've never seen an Ultimate Warrior promo, do yourself a favor and look them up on YouTube. They are just bonkers.
Yeah, they're fun for sure.
Yeah. So there's more weirdness surrounding his actual death, though. And
when did he pass? Because that was pretty recent, right? A couple years.
Yeah,
now?
It was a few years ago. But he was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, which happens the day before WrestleMania. They have every year they do the Hall of Fame ceremony and induct new people. And he was inducted into the Hall of Fame. He had a really awesome speech. Everyone was like, "Oh my God, it's the Ultimate Warrior. He's so awesome." And so they invited him to Monday Night Raw the day after WrestleMania. And he just came out to talk, like he's not wrestling. He just came out and he was talking, just doing a speech. And the speech was very odd because it was almost like he was talking like he knew he was going to die. The speech itself, he's talking about every man has a day that they're no longer around anymore. That he just was going on about things like that, and it was a really powerful speech, but it seemed like a speech someone would give like right before they died. Like if it was like a political prisoner being executed, but they gave him the stand to say what he wanted, and he just gives this last speech, a big heroic speech about how he's about to die and every man has their day to die, but be who you are. Well, that sort of thing. It was very strange. And then I don't remember if it was the day after or 2 days after. It was either the Tuesday or Wednesday that he did die. And it was just like, he wasn't sick. He didn't have an illness. He just died. But while he was giving this speech, he kept throwing up the devil horns, which is like an occult hand symbol known as the mano cornudo. And it's supposed to be used to ward evil and also warn other people that evil is present. So the conspiracy theory is that he knew he was about to die and that he gave this speech and he was using these hand symbols to communicate with people without saying anything, that he knew evil was nearby and that he was trying to ward it off, but maybe it had something to do with his death.
That's odd to have the platform that you used to have after so long.
Mm-hmm.
And just like in that rare moment, I mean, that's something that none of us could really imagine unless you used to be like a really cool breakdancer and you come back and do some cool show or something weird like that. That's a very unique situation. Sorry for the example of a breakdancer. I don't know why that popped in there. But to give a speech like that is very odd. Maybe he was killed by Satanists. What was his official cause of death? A deadly dose of warrior.
A deadly death of awesome. So when he died the day after Raw, but according to people that were there, he clutched his chest and he collapsed while walking to his car with his wife outside of a hotel. And they rushed him to the hospital and he was pronounced dead once he got there.
That's weird when people have heart attacks
Mm-hmm.
and there's any mystery surrounded by them and they have a heart attack outside.
Yeah.
I always think heart attack gun. I mean, it's laughable, but it's real and it's been proven to exist and work, right?
Well, I don't know if it's been proven, but it's a part of a lot of conspiracy theories.
What was he doing on the internet before he came back with this, notoriety or after? Because I remember seeing some clips of him being an absolute fucking weirdo.
Yeah, that was after he retired from wrestling. He did a lot of weird stuff, but he legally changed his name to Warrior, so that the WWE couldn't trademark Warrior. So he legally changed his name to Warrior. Yeah.
Taking one for all the little warriors, I guess.
Yeah. So after he retired at 99, and he went on a speaking trip, or not trip, a tour, I guess. And he was talking about conservative politics, basically. And he, he talked a lot of shit about gay people and really would roll any left-wing politicians or people that supported left-wing politicians. He'd drag them through the mud. And one thing that he said, and he tried to explain it away, and it's terrible, but he says, it sounds so old man too. But in one speech, he said, queering doesn't make the world work. And he later explained that by those comments, he meant that if everybody was gay, the human race would die off because then people wouldn't have babies.
Okay, that helps.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Queering? What? Queering don't make the world work? Yeah. Is that what it was?
Yeah, basically.
Holy shit. That's super unfortunate to hear that, him saying shit like that.
I guess he later walked back those comments, like later in his life, but I mean, still, it's pretty terrible things to say.
Yeah, especially when he was such an inspiration to, I mean, like he was like the answer for people who didn't like Hulk Hogan,
Mm-hmm.
Like he was like the second cool guy after Macho Man was gone.
He was the first guy to have the world heavyweight title and the intercontinental title at the same time.
Yeah.
It's big shit, man. But I don't know. He was kind of a weird dude. He had his website that you had mentioned. It was called The Warrior's Machete. It was basically written rants by him. He also created a comic book of himself. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah, I think it's just called Warrior. But it was basically himself as a comic book character.
Wow. That's every dude's dream.
Yeah. Yeah. But after his death, the WWE created a new part of the Hall of Fame called the Warrior Award, where they take someone who made a big impact or overcame the odds. Like they had Joan London on there for being a cancer survivor. They had this little kid who was a huge WWE fan who ended up dying of this rare, I think it was brain cancer, named Connor. He was inducted. I don't remember who else has been, but it's that sort of thing. So they do that in his honor, which is pretty cool, I think.
Yeah. They always do mixed things when somebody of note passes in any type of sports. Sometimes they don't mention them. Sometimes they spend half the show talking about them. And I think that's pretty cool to make some type of award. That's a cool way to immortalize somebody, I'd say.
Yeah, I would think so. But not to dwell too much on the Ultimate Warrior, but I mentioned that he threw up the devil horns a lot to show that he's warding off evil, but that is apparently it's a ongoing thing with the WWE, which is kind of interesting. There's a lot of conspiracy theories that they're involved with the Illuminati.
Really?
Yeah.
That's weird. You hear a lot of business people talking very good about Vince McMahon and how smart he is and how he's gotten so big, and they're a big company. I mean, he knows how to make money. You got
to think. So before we even get into these conspiracy theories, basically just a brief history on professional wrestling. It started when it was first coming up. It wasn't like it is today. It was a bunch of small territories scattered all across the United States. And some of them would be a group of states. Some territories would be a little bigger. And then you had territories that were kind of unified. And that was the NWA, the National Wrestling Alliance. And they had one title, but the champion would go from territory to territory that was within the National Wrestling Alliance. And he was their champion. So, over here he'd go to Tennessee And then another time he'd go to Virginia or Florida or wherever, and he'd wrestle their guys in their territory and then go to another territory. And then there was the WWWF, the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. And that was owned by Vince McMahon Sr. And his territory was the Northeast. And then there were a bunch of smaller ones littered around. And after Vince McMahon Sr. died and Vince McMahon, Mr. McMahon, as we all know him now, after he took over, he started buying up territories, and he built this huge, they were the first national company. That was one company. They were separate from the NWA at that point. They had their own champion, and it was their own thing. So if you look at it just that, he completely revolutionized the way that professional wrestling was seen in this country. He made it a national phenomenon, and he made it a global phenomenon ultimately. So you're reaching all these people. You're taking this thing that's basically a circus. You know, it's so completely ridiculous. And you're taking it from just being a local level. A lot of these territories didn't even have TV deals. You know, some of them did, but a lot of them didn't. And you're able to take this and make it into a multi-billion-dollar company that's worldwide, all over the place. They've got branches all over the world. They tour all over the world. They've got impact on the public now. You know, Donald Trump is in the WWE Hall of Fame.
Yeah, he's always been cool with Vince McMahon, right?
Yeah, and Linda McMahon, Vince's wife, was hired by Trump once he became president to be part of his cabinet.
See, I thought that was a joke. Is that
no?
That's real?
That's 100% real.
What does he want her to do?
She was hired to become the administrator of the Small Business Administration.
That makes sense.
Yeah, but she had a history. She ran for Senate previous to being elected, or not being elected, being appointed, I should say.
I heard some conspiracy that Vince McMahon that we know is not really Vince McMahon, that he's been a double.
What?
Like, yeah.
I've not heard this. Tell me this.
They picked an actor just like they picked an actor for like a wrestlers, some dude to play Vince, you know, so he can stay behind the scenes.
So Vince is the Wizard of Oz, you're saying?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't buy it. His kids look too much like him, unless it's an uncle.
Maybe. I wouldn't see the point ultimately.
Yeah, it does seem weird, but that's a pretty funny one.
I saw some footage of Stephanie McMahon. I have, like I said, I haven't watched wrestling in a long time. And
yeah.
She's had a couple surgeries.
Yeah, a little bit. A couple on her chest.
Yeah. There's a way to dedicate yourself,
Two big ones.
Like ridiculous.
Ridiculous, like, yeah.
Yeah. Gotta hand it to her for going under the knife for the job.
I guess. Ugh. Goddamn bolt-ons. Anyway, this isn't an episode about Stephanie McMahon's boobs.
No, dear God, no.
Although I could see maybe why the Illuminati might be attracted. The Illuminati likes big fake boobs.
Good for them.
Because they're primarily crusty old men, and crusty old men like big boobs for some reason. You know.
That's true. Even if they're big fake ones,
they probably prefer big fake ones.
Yeah. So I was gonna say that's probably their preference.
Yeah. Creepy, crusty old men. Anyway, so this whole Illuminati thing, though, it's a lot of it is seen in symbolism and hand gestures. So there's the devil horns that we see, or that I mentioned that the warrior was throwing up. But
and that's just a basic heavy metal band, devil horns,
heavy
right?
metal
Okay,
devil
cool.
horns.
Just so we're clear with everybody.
Yeah. But there's a group backstage known as the Click, with a K and a Q, just to be key. But this was Scott Hall, Razor Ramon, Kevin Nash, who's Diesel, Sean Waltman, who was the 1-2-3 Kid, and X-Pac, Triple H, and Shawn Michaels. And they do this hand symbol that's like the devil horns, but what they do is take the tips of their 2 middle fingers and put it to the tip of their thumb to make like a point, but then they stick the devil horns up, and then they do a greeting like where they'll touch the points to the points of the other guy's hand and say "too sweet," but it's more like "too sweet." But I guess has something to do with worshiping the devil. But whenever I hear worshiping the devil, I'm pretty sure that means not actually worshiping the devil, but being involved in the occult in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Satanists don't worship the devil. The Satanic Temple does not worship the devil. They don't even believe the devil exists. It's a whole other thing. But anyway, these hand symbols are, and then John Cena, there's a theory that he is also in on this, and his whole family man, good guy demeanor is just a front to lure children to Satan. But what he does, his symbol is he makes the okay, the okay with your finger, where you make the circle with your forefinger and thumb and then stick the other 3 fingers up in the air.
Yeah.
So he does that, but he spreads his fingers, which if you look at it, that's 666.
Yeah, 3 6s. I've seen that hand gesture explained as that before.
Yeah. And that's like he throws that up all the time. That's his thing. And that's just further proof that they're in with the Illuminati. But they also use other symbolism. So in Raw, they recently, within the past year or so, I think maybe it's the past 2 years, on Monday Night Raw, they changed the intro. And there's a point where the effects like focus in on the triangle in the middle of the A, and that takes up like most of the screen, and it looks like the Eye of Providence, the all-seeing eye, and it zooms through that, and then it goes into a different graphic. It's really obvious if you're familiar with the symbol, because there's like sparks and fire and stuff coming off the word Raw. So it really makes it look like the Eye of Providence as it's coming out. But there's also this tag team called the Ascension, and their logo is a triangle with the Eye of Horus in it. So it's the all-seeing eye, but with the Eye of Horus rather than just a human eye in there. And they're called the Ascension. I mean, they're complete jobbers though, so it would seem kind of silly to make them the poster boys of the Illuminati when, they haven't won a match in 2 years.
That's funny though. You'd think they would. Their art department's always been awesome. They've always made really great logos. I remember when The Rock got popular finally, all his artwork was awesome. And I wonder why they're using actual symbols like the Eye of Horus instead of just making some logo that looks like it. That's strange.
Yeah, and maybe they are making the poster boys of the Illuminati jobbers so that they seem unthreatening. Even though they paint their faces like demons and zombies, and they wear these crazy shoulder pad things, and they look all scary, and they come out to heavy metal music. Their music is actually really awesome. But they lose all the fucking time. They are such jobbers. But they're used as comedy now. So maybe Vince broke away from the Illuminati, and he's making the poster boys of the Illuminati look like bitches. And he's like, yeah, fuck you, Illuminati. I'm more powerful than you now. And he just sits there counting his stacks of money.
Wow.
Buying football leagues and trying to run the NFL out of business. Vince is a maniac. But speaking of Vince being a maniac, there's a lot of weird conspiracy theories surrounding him. And these conspiracy theories, they're more centered on the wrestling world rather than ties with the Illuminati or devil worship or anything crazy like that. But have you heard of ECW?
Oh yeah, that was like the televised hardcore, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it started as Eastern Championship Wrestling and then became Extreme Championship Wrestling. And then it went out of business in 2001. But
Tommy Dreamer and shit, right?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So that it was always looked at as being like a low budget alternative to WCW, but what they lacked in budget, they made up for in violence. And towards the end of ECW, there were people that started thinking maybe ECW wasn't independent, that maybe it was being funded by WWE or Vince McMahon. And it ended up being true, which is weird. But where it started was Vince allowed ECW guys to come on Monday Night Raw and have ECW matches on Raw. And it was weird because it's another promotion that he's allowing to appear on his show. He's promoting them now. And then later on, it was revealed that he gave the owner, Paul Heyman, a $500,000 loan. And he was paying the parent company that owned ECW. I don't remember the exact amount, but he was paying them every month until ECW went under. And as soon as they went under, he bought everything going, like all the tapes and all the rights to the stuff after ECW closed. And then later brought it back on the Sci-Fi Network, and it sucked so many dicks.
They put ECW on the Sci-Fi Network?
Yeah, but it wasn't really ECW. At that point, it was just another branch of WWE that had some of the old ECW guys. But it wasn't ECW anymore. It wasn't what made ECW ECW. It was just regular WWE show, just with different guys.
Yeah, I heard something to where Vince was given ECW money so he can like have enough shares to where he had a say in what happened. And when he did, he was like, shut it down.
Yeah, because there was Tommy Dreamer actually came out and was talking about how WCW wanted to run an invasion angle where ECW invaded WCW, and it would have given ECW more money. It would have allowed them to stay afloat, and they wouldn't have gone bankrupt. But Paul Heyman refused to do it because it would make Vince mad. And so Tommy Dreamer's like, why do we care what Vince thinks? But then he started to put the pieces together, and he realized that Vince was funding ECW. So if they wanted Vince to keep funding, they wouldn't have been able to do the WCW invasion angle. But had they done the WCW invasion angle, maybe both companies would have stayed around, because both companies ended up closing in 2001. And Vince bought both of them and then ran an invasion angle of his own, where he basically buried WCW and ECW. Made them all look like shit so that he could put his company over as being the best.
Mm-hmm.
But when he brought WCW guys over, he didn't even bring over their biggest stars. Like, he didn't bring over Sting. He didn't bring over Goldberg. It took a while for DDP to show up. You know, there were a lot of guys, like, he brought over all the mid-carders and jobbers, and I don't think he brought over Disco Inferno, though, which is a damn shame.
Yeah, he was pretty awesome.
There was no Alex Wright on fucking Raw. What the hell?
Yes, that'd be awesome to see Sabu fucking bleeding all over.
Sabu was there.
Was he really?
Yeah, he stuck around for a while, actually.
That's awesome.
Yeah, Rob Van Dam stuck around. Rob Van Dam was a multi-time champion in WWE.
No kidding. Yeah.
They even brought over the Blue World Order for a little bit, which was fucking awesome. I love that shit. But are you familiar with the Montreal Screwjob?
Oh, yeah. That was Bret the Hitman Fart, right?
Yeah.
Vince ringing the bell on him?
Yeah. So there's a lot of theories that whole thing was a work. That everybody in the match and some of the production crew were all involved, including Bret.
See, I heard the conspiracies about how Vince screwed Brett over.
Yeah.
But I just recently came across how even Brett was in on it. So I can't wait for you to tell this.
Yeah. The idea, Bret Hart was going to WCW and he got Vince's blessing, but he was the champion and his contract ran out at Survivor Series. But Survivor Series was in Montreal and Bret Hart is from Montreal. He's from Calgary. But anyway, he didn't want to lose the title in Canada. And Bret Hart allegedly arranged this scenario where he would beat Shawn Michaels at Survivor Series in Montreal. And then he would show up the following night on Raw, even though he wasn't contracted to do so, to do the job for Shawn. But he didn't have there was no contract in place. And they had recently lost their women's champion, Alundra Blaze. She went over to WCW and threw away the title on live TV. Like, fuck you, WWE. Psh.
Ooh.
Yeah. And they didn't want that happening again. So they told Bret Hart to basically do the job. And he didn't want to. So they decided, allegedly, that they would go through with Bret Hart's deal, and Bret Hart would show up on Raw the next night and do the job, give the title back to Shawn Michaels, and then go to WCW. What ended up happening was that Shawn Michaels, during the match, put Bret Hart in the sharpshooter, and then they rang the bell. Vince McMahon was at ringside, which he wasn't supposed to be at ringside. The referee called for the bell to ring and then ran out of the ring. And then Bret Hart spit the biggest loogie ever on Vince McMahon's face.
I remember that. That was the biggest loogie
ever.
It
was so big. And then he wrote WCW in the air with his finger. But then the story goes that Vince McMahon went backstage and Bret Hart laid him out and gave him a black eye. And then Bret Hart didn't show up again until 2010. And he was, really bitter about it. He went to WCW. He didn't do so well in WCW, ended up having a match with Goldberg. Goldberg gave him a really bad concussion that ultimately led to him having a stroke, and he never wrestled again. Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah. So I don't really understand what the point in this being a work would be, but according to a lot of wrestlers, they believe that this is a work. And Kevin Nash was one he's like, if you know Vince McMahon, you know that he doesn't sell anything. He's had concussions. He doesn't sell them on TV. He's had, during a Royal Rumble, he came down to the ring, slid in the ring and tore both of his quad muscles. And he no-sold the pain on TV. But he was selling this black eye on TV that he had been punched and all that. And he's like, Vince won't sell anything unless it's a work. And so he believes it's a work. Then Scott Hall chimed in saying it's a work. Road Dogg, I don't know if you know who Road Dogg. Do you remember Road Dogg?
Hell yeah.
Part of the New Age Outlaws.
Yeah.
Yeah. He said that it's a work. X-Pac has said it's a work. A lot of it, but the thing is, all these guys that are saying it's a work are friends with Shawn Michaels. So do they know more than we know when they're saying it? Or are they saying that to make it look like Shawn Michaels wasn't the bad guy and that both guys were in on it? Maybe that's a conspiracy within a conspiracy. I don't know.
I didn't know that he got hurt so bad in WCW. That's too bad.
Yeah, after he had that concussion, it ruined his career.
How do you have a stroke from a concussion?
I don't know. I don't remember the exact reason why, but it had something to do with the concussion.
That's weird.
Yeah. But the one that I want to talk about the most, which is it's the most tragic event in wrestling history, really, and that's the Benoit murder-suicide.
Yeah. If you guys, like I said before, a regular listener, I don't watch wrestling anymore. I don't much like it. But I won't get into why. I don't want to start getting hate mail and lose 5 of the 7 listeners we have. But even I remember the old Rabid Wolverine. What was he, the Pegasus Kid or something?
Yeah, at one point he was a Pegasus Kid, yeah.
But yeah, he was a wrestler amongst wrestlers. He was every wrestler's favorite dude. And there's even historians of wrestling who rank him in the top 10, if not the top 5 greats of all time. But yeah, he worked as a wrestler for 22 years, and he wrestled with pretty much like every company, right? WCW,
ECW, WWE. I think he was even over in Japan for a bit.
Yeah, he was. And didn't he wrestle with Dean Malenko?
Yeah, they came. 4 guys from WCW came over. It was Dean Malenko, Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, and Perry Saturn. And they were called the Radicals when they first came over.
But like Mike had mentioned, he killed himself in June of 2007. And we're all familiar with how a lot of wrestlers meet untimely deaths, dying far too young, be it by heart attacks, by years and years of drug abuse, or just regular old body abuse and doing the job too long. But it was shocking to find out that Benoit had committed suicide. Now, Mike, reading back about it, because I remember when this happened.
Yeah.
How long was it until we found out that he had died, and then how much time had passed till we found out he killed himself? Because shit wasn't the same as it is now. You can just find out. Somebody who worked for WWE tweets this shit out, you know?
It was really weird because I remember watching Raw that night, and Vince McMahon at the time, he had killed his character off on TV. He blew up in a limo. He closed the door, the limo blew up. And so his character on TV was dead. But he came out and started the show, and they were acting kind of cagey about it, because it was a lot different. Eddie Guerrero had died before this, and they did a big announcement and talked about his career and how great he was and all that. But when Vince came out, he didn't really give many details. He just said that they'd found out that Chris Benoit and his family were dead. And it was like, what the fuck? What happened? And then they did backstage interviews with people talking about Chris Benoit live on TV that night while the show was going on. And one of his good friends, William Regal, just seemed like you'd think that he was, that he would have more to say, but he didn't talk at all about Chris Benoit, the person. The only things that he was complimentary of was Chris Benoit, the wrestler. And he only talked about his ring work, where everybody else was talking about how nice he was and how much they loved him, and they talked about his son and how he loved his son, and just like all these really heartbreaking stories. But that's the weird thing, because everybody that knew Chris Benoit always said that he loved his son more than anything, and his son was like the greatest thing to Chris Benoit. So it seems weird that he would kill his son when everybody knew how much pride he took in being a father and how much he loved his son.
Yeah, that was common knowledge, even as just a passive fan, that you knew how much, I loved Chris Benoit. He was one of my favorite wrestlers, or AKA Benoit. I love
Chris Jericho calling him Benoit.
Yeah, but it's almost commonplace now when you hear about celebrities killing themselves these days. And it was really fucking weird to hear that he killed himself after we found out he died, and then to find he killed himself, and then to later find out that he killed, basically his whole fucking family and even his son. And we'll get into drug tests and toxicology reports in a second. But when you found out that he had wiped out his family, unfortunately, did your mind instantly go to roid rage? Well,
that kind of came out at around the same time, when they actually had all the information out and they released what happened on the internet and all that. It was they had stated that he choked his wife and his son to death, and then he hung himself. And they did an autopsy on him, and he had he had the brain of like an 80-year-old Alzheimer's patient.
How shocking is that, man? That's scary. And they said it was a direct result of wrestling.
Yeah. And well, I mean, for the longest time, one of his finishing moves was the diving headbutt. I mean, you're jumping off like at the top of the turnbuckle, which is like probably like 5 feet in the air. And then plus, however tall you are. So if he's 6 feet tall on top of 5 feet, your head is 11 feet in the air and you're diving off and landing head first onto another human being. That's, and not to mention back when he was wrestling, they were allowing chair shots to the head as well.
Yeah.
So he had a history of concussions. He had multiple concussions, which causes brain damage every single time. And as we know from all this stuff coming out from the NFL, having that amount of concussions can lead to a lot of psychological problems, from depression to fugue states to, Alzheimer-like symptoms. And it's easy to become confused in those times or act against the way you would normally act. Who knows what was going on at that point in time? It's really strange.
Well, like Mike said, he killed himself and his wife and his child. And I was wondering how they found this. And I guess now the story is that he had missed, quote, several appointments, and police were asked to conduct a welfare check on Benoit's home. So I don't know. I find it very odd that people he had appointments with, who were the people that prompted the police to do this welfare check. Do we know what appointments he was missing? I mean, there was an MMA fighter that avoided a call from his doctor for 2 years to tell him he was HIV fucking positive.
Wow, that's fucked up.
Yeah, they didn't fucking send. I mean, you'd think that's when they'd call the police and say, find this fucking guy.
Right, yeah.
Why are they so concerned about Chris Benoit?
Mm-hmm.
Why? It's odd to me, but what they found was that his wife's hands were actually tied behind her back and she was strangled, like we said. And the toxicology reports revealed that his son was drugged, and unfortunately, that poor guy was strangled.
Mm-hmm.
But Chris waited in the house with the bodies for 3 days.
Well,
and I guess, go ahead.
There's also a difference in the way Chris Benoit was found, because it was originally reported that he was found hanging from the weight machine, but according to the police officer that found him, he was slumped up against the machine.
Really? See, the official ruling is the writing that I read is that they say, quote, killed himself with a weight machine. Now, I thought of crushing for some reason. I didn't think of hanging.
Yeah, I don't know why they were reporting originally that he was found hanging from the weight machine, but he was found slumped against the weight machine. But there was more weirdness in that as well.
Well, did you hear about the toxicology reports about what they had in their system?
I think I have. Go ahead, though.
When I heard this, I instantly thought of roid rage and walked right past it because it bummed me out to hear about this. But doing a little bit of reading about what we know now, his wife was found to have Xanax in her system, something called hydrocodone, which is a pain medication related to codeine.
Right.
And another one called hydromorphone, which is a pain medication related to morphine. The interesting thing is that Benoit himself was found to have Xanax and the hydrocodone, as well as elevated levels of testosterone.
Right.
But they concluded that he was being treated for low testosterone, and his wife's levels of these drugs were all within therapeutic range. They weren't abusing these drugs. This wasn't a roid rage snap.
And to further that, well, I shouldn't say further that, but kind of going along with that, they said that they found steroids at his house.
Really?
But they never found any needles. There was no needles anywhere in his house that he could use to inject the steroids.
Do you think he could have been selling it?
Or maybe it was planted.
Ooh. Okay, so now that's the injection the conspiracy to the situation? What's the conspiracy surrounding this event?
Well, the conspiracy is that somebody else did this. And there's a lot of things that point to that. So there's the steroid thing. There were also 10 empty beer cans and an empty bottle of wine next to Chris's body when he died. But there was no alcohol found in his blood when he was tested. And Nancy Benoit, his wife, 14 hours before her body was found, someone posted it on the internet that she was dead.
Yeah, somebody had actually changed his Wikipedia page stating that he had lost his life and his wife had lost her life in a tragic event.
Mm-hmm.
How creepy is that?
Yeah.
I wonder if they were able to trace who updated that back then. Probably not, but I guarantee you they could now.
Yeah, I don't recall if they ever traced it back. I think they may have, and it was just some person that said they posted it as a joke. But who knows? That could be part of the cover-up too. I don't know.
But yeah, that could be. But that is a hell of a coincidence.
Yeah.
I mean,
and why pick his wife of all people? Like, that seems really weird. But there's more to go along with that. So Chavo Guerrero, who is Eddie Guerrero's nephew, but he's close in age with Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit, and they're really close. But he said that he talked to Chris Benoit on Friday night on his house phone. And he said they were on the phone for 45 minutes. And while they were talking, Chris told him that someone was knocking at the door and he was going to go see who it was. And according to Chavo, he said that he heard a scuffle and then the phone line went dead. And he tried to call back. He couldn't get in touch with him. And it wasn't until 3 hours later that he was able to reach Chris on his cell phone. And after he finally got a hold of Chris on his cell, he said that Chris Benoit sounded groggy and tired. And he sounded weird, like he was kind of distant and almost like someone was forcing him to say things. And he said that Chris Benoit said, "I love you, Chavo." But he said it sounded hollow and kind of forced. And then Benoit called WWE, and I think there was a pay-per-view that weekend. But he called in and he told them that Nancy and Daniel, who was his son, were sick and that he could not come in. He couldn't come to work. And the person he was speaking with said he sounded odd as well. And then he said, "I love you" to them, which is weird because why would he say "I love you" to that random WWE representative that he talked to? Yeah. When after the bodies were found, they never found his cell phone.
No kidding.
Yeah.
See, that's strange because it seems like it would be an easy thing to do to look up his location and just off the pings off the cell phone towers of where he was when he called these people.
And then he sent a lot of weird text messages to people too. I can't remember exactly who the individuals were that he sent them to, but I remember he sent one person a text message that just said, "The dogs are out in the yard. Can you take care of them?" or something like that. And just like a weird messages like that, like you wouldn't just send for no reason. And they didn't find a cell phone, which is weird. And why would he let the dogs out? Also weird. But,
yeah, and if he did, why couldn't he just do it himself?
Yeah. So the conspiracy goes further and implicates this guy named Kevin Sullivan, who is known as the Taskmaster. He was a wrestler in WCW. And Nancy was his wife at the time. And he was also writing creative for WCW as well. And he came up with a storyline where Nancy would leave him for Chris Benoit, as part of the show. But it ended up happening in real life. And they ended up getting married and having a son. And as the story goes, apparently at one point, Kevin Sullivan told Chris Benoit he was going to kill him. And he's also got ties to some satanic cult, allegedly.
How so? What type of ties?
He's a member
Oh, wow. Okay. So, yeah, he's just a straight up Satanist then.
Well, allegedly. I don't know if that's
okay.
that's actually true or not. So the conspiracy theory goes that Kevin Sullivan, after all that time, finally decided to get his revenge and hired a hitman to kill Chris Benoit and his family. Now, I've heard another part of this. I cannot verify if this is accurate or not, but apparently part of this theory is that the autopsies on Chris Benoit and his family showed that Chris died on Saturday, but his family died on Sunday.
That would pretty much destroy what the cops reported.
And the autopsy also showed that the steroids that they found in Chris's body were not the same type that were found in his house.
Yeah, I didn't know there was this much that pointed to foul play. I mean that's a lot.
Yeah, and then there's one final kind of weird connection. I don't know if this actually has anything to do with his death or not, but it's kind of interesting to note. Chris Benoit had, early in his career, had a tag team partner named Biff Wellington. And this other wrestler, he used to wrestle in the WWE, named Rene Dupree. He was the one that brought this connection up. But Biff Wellington was found dead the same day that the Benoits were found dead. And they were a few hundred miles apart. And Biff Wellington died of a heart attack.
On the same day?
Yep.
That's, I don't know. I don't think you can scoff at that too fast. That's weird.
Yeah. It is kind of weird. And Biff Wellington wasn't, he wasn't very well known outside of Canada. But he didn't go on to have a career like Chris Benoit had. He wasn't in the WWE, but he was found dead the same day, and they were tag team partners and friends. So that it just seems weird.
No, I wonder why this lady's ex-husband would want him dead, or if that's how would you kill somebody with a heart attack? Like
heart attack gun, Mateo. This is the Illuminati.
Gun. Yeah, maybe they have that capability. Just rent a heart attack gun from your local Illuminati store, which used to be located under all Blockbusters, right? It's part of the reason why they went down.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they got hit with heart attack guns.
Every single Blockbuster on the same day.
Yep, they all got heart attacked, and then they went out of business. It was an economic heart attack, Mateo. It works the same way. It's the exact same way. It's just economic instead of, your heart stopping. They cut off the flow of money instead of the flow of blood.
Did anybody talk to this Taskmaster dude or question him? Was he questioned by police at all?
There's actually, I don't know if you knew this, there's a Chris Benoit movie being made called Crossface. And the original idea for the movie, it's not a documentary, like they're actually doing like a biopic. But the original idea was going to be that Chris Benoit was murdered by Kevin Sullivan. And Kevin Sullivan threatened to sue if they went forward with that.
That is hilarious.
Yeah.
I wonder if he could sue, though. They're like, it's a movie. It's made up.
Yeah, but still, if it's a biopic and you're telling the story and you're saying this guy murdered the family, you're using all the facts and then fabricating that. It's a little suspect.
That's hilarious, though.
Yeah.
Can you imagine being the director of that? Be like, yep, fuck you, bro.
Yeah. I know you did it, motherfucker. I knows it.
This is the one way I can say stick it up your ass, so I did.
Yeah. So I don't know. There's some weird details in the case. I'm not going to say I buy into it. I can say that I remain hopeful that maybe that's the case, just because Chris Benoit was one of my favorites, and
yeah,
it sucks to have that attached to him, because he was one of the best of all time from a wrestling standpoint,
Yeah, there's a lot of dudes who were in WWE and stuff like that, and they just were big dudes, and they threw them in fucking Killer Kowalski's training school for a couple months, and then put him in his jobbers. You know, there's a lot of people who weren't even fucking wrestlers that ended up being in the WWE, but Chris Benoit was a real wrestler. I always loved watching him wrestle. And that sucks. It's weird. I almost, like you said, I hope that somebody murdered them. That sounds terrible to say, but that could be just the high esteem I hold for Chris Benoit, because to do something like that, again, bringing up, knowing how much he cared about his son and his wife, that's either drugs or mental illness. If somebody didn't do that, and I don't know if we're learning more about that. What do they call it? The CPT or whatever? Just how the brain gets damaged from trauma. You know, they're bringing it up a lot with the
football stuff.
And football stuff.
Mm.
Does an 85-year-old man with Alzheimer's want to kill his family? I don't know. That sucks. I think that has a lot to do with it. Again, the blood test showed there wasn't levels of any partying drugs or anything like that, and not his or his wife's toxicology reports. There was no cocaine or any shit you'd expect to see somebody be doing if they're flipping out and killing their family.
Well, I mean, I don't really know from experience, but what would you take if you were to flip out and kill your family?
Dude, I've seen fucking videos where people were just on coke and they cut their own face off, you know? I mean, anything. People can get drunk enough. What was that one MMA dude who cut out his roommate's heart and ate it? And they were just doing like, I don't know what they were
terrifying.
On. Yeah. I mean, can you imagine having an MMA practitioner as your roommate and you're constantly like,
you're just some dude and he comes at you with a fucking knife. Nope.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
You already know that there's nothing you can do if this guy wants to fold you in half. And here he comes with a knife. I'm gonna eat you. You're like, I guess this is happening.
I would prefer if you didn't eat me, sir. Please stop eating me. Thank you.
I think that alcohol can spur some people to freak out that hard if they get that drunk. But I don't know. It's a sad story. That sucks. Reading about it, I was like, oh man, I remember fucking Benoit. Enter sad music here.
Well, let's not end on a sad note. Let's end really quick by talking about how Shawn Michaels and Vince McMahon were very likely banging each other on the regular.
What?
Yeah, this is a theory. It kind of goes in with the Montreal Screwjob, but as anybody knows, watching WWE through the 80s and 90s, Vince McMahon loves big sweaty men. That's his prototype. If you're a big dude and you're charismatic, sometimes even if you're not charismatic, if you're just a big dude, Vince McMahon wants you to be champion. Shawn Michaels, if you look at him during that period of time, he was like one of the smallest guys on the roster.
Yeah.
And he got pushed to the moon. He was able to get away with all sorts of crazy shit that nobody else would be able to get away with. He was completely unprofessional in his youth. He would cry and bitch and moan about everything and be able to get away with it. At one point, he took 4 years off, and Vince McMahon paid him his full contract the entire time he was off. And there's a theory that he is banging Shawn Michaels, or was banging Shawn
Michaels. Give McMahon an old pee-pee kiss?
Yeah, a little. And apparently some wrestlers have even come out and stated that as if they knew for a fact that was going on.
Wow. Has there been any other wrestlers that came forward with that shit? Like he tried to touch my peeper so I can win him around?
No, I think he's only got eyes for Shawn.
Wow.
He's just a sexy boy, Mateo. He's not your boy toy, but he might be Vince's.
Well, think about like Shawn Michaels' old get-ups, you know, just like the leather chaps and stuff.
Yeah. He thinks he's cute and he knows he's sexy, Mateo. I don't know if you've ever heard it or not, but the original version of that song was literally sung by Vince McMahon.
Are you serious?
I'm 100. You can look it up on YouTube right now. It's a thing to behold. We need to link that in the show notes because that's something that needs to be shared with everyone. It's just too good not to listen.
He did. He put on he took off all his clothes, put on one of his wife's mink fur coats, closed his eyes, and sang his heart out about his boy toy. Good for him. I gave you the world, Shawn Michaels.
I gave you the best years of the 90s. And this is what you do to me.
I'm sorry, Vince. I'm going to the WCW now. He has the weirdest voice. When I was a kid.
It is very weird.
Yeah, I heard him talk for the first time. I was like, don't do that. Oh my God. That's one of the biggest letdowns ever. Especially when you got people like Undertaker walking out there, taking 45 minutes to get to the ring because he's part corpse and he's got to walk slow. Shawn Michaels comes out there and sounds like your high school math teacher.
All right, I got to send this to you because, oh my God, it's amazing.
I'm going to press play right now. Okay, guys, we just got done listening to this song, and I think I can safely conclude and wrap up this conspiracy theory and say that Vince McMahon was definitely rubbing wieners with Shawn Michaels.
Yeah, they were in love, Mateo. Don't mock their love. It was a manly sort of love.
That's okay. I hope they were in love. I hope they just were safe. And if it was a side thing, don't play with Mr. McMahon's heart.
I bet they would bang with Shawn Michaels wearing the world title belt. Nothing but the world title belt. Just like when he was in Playgirl.
Oh God, Shawn Michaels did Playgirl?
Sure did. And they made a big deal about it on WWE TV.
I bet Vince
needed the world to see what he was getting on a regular.
That's how smart Vince McMahon is. Yeah. So he set up Shawn Michaels doing Playgirl. So when the story broke 20 years later, he's like, well, look at him. Mm-hmm. He's a sexy boy.
Yeah, he is. So I guess we can conclude by saying Vince McMahon does like big sweaty men, just not in the way you think.
Yeah, he made it his business and his pleasure.
Oh,
go Vince McMahon! He's the king of everything he does,
including Shawn Michaels' ass.
Oh God, Shawn Michaels' ass. You want that Intercontinental title? You know what you need to do. You just need to sit right here.
Oh God.
Well, I mean, it's stuff like that. We're completely joking. We don't mean to offend anybody for sure. If that happened,
except for maybe Vince McMahon, you can take a flying leap.
Yeah,
on Shawn Michaels' dick.
But if something like this did happen, I mean, as we're learning now with like the Weinstein stuff, and I mean, it definitely fucking happens.
Mateo, don't accuse Vince of being a sexual predator. The thing between him and Shawn was beautiful in the way that Jake Gyllenhaal and Heath Ledger love each other. That's how Vince McMahon and Shawn Michaels love each other. It's a beautiful thing on a mountainside in a fucking tent, or in the back room of a boardroom, or under the desk, or in the middle of the ring wearing a title championship. But it's not for us to judge.
Well, I mean, if that was the case, I'm sad it didn't last. But when it comes to things like this, I mean, do
who's
people
to
really
say it
think
didn't last, Mateo? Are you in their bedrooms? True. Maybe they're holding penises right now.
Just smiling.
Thinking
about the old times.
Holding each other's balls.
But people don't think about, like, with the whole Weinstein thing. Do you think he was the only dude in this huge organization that is the Hollywood movie director that was doing that?
Oh, he absolutely isn't. Like, there's look at Roman Polanski. He won't even come back to the United States because he had sex with a teenager.
Yeah. And
he's a weirdo.
I wonder if shit's gonna actually change now that it's all out in the open. Maybe Linda McMahon was grabbing some wieners herself.
Maybe. Who's to say? Maybe she's banging Hulk Hogan. Wouldn't that be a slap in the face, Vince? Your biggest creation is banging your wife.
Ugh. Vince McMahon kept himself in pretty good shape over the years.
Because he was trying to compete with Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, and steroids.
Surely you're not saying that Vince McMahon uses steroids to remain super buff when he's 300 years old. Surely you're not saying that.
I'm saying everybody who's ever been in the WWE besides maybe CM Punk has been doing steroids. Like we both watch UFC. We get to see what dudes who work out 2 or 3 times a day, 5 days a week look like. And they don't look like WWE guys. That's fucking steroids.
I don't think that's necessarily the case, because the guys for UFC are training differently than guys in wrestling. You know, the guys in wrestling, they're focused more on the appearance and the muscles, and you know, they're working out differently than UFC fighters are. You know, but you do have guys like look at fucking Hector Lombard. That dude, if he wasn't so goddamn short, he would look like a wrestler.
Yes, but there's only a few of those guys.
Yeah.
There are those muscle freaks that are just have crazy, you know, Yoel Romero is just the specimen, you know.
But he did test positive for steroids, so not a good argument.
And so did Brian Ortega. Nobody's talking about that. He failed a drug test too.
Did he really?
Just putting that out there. Yeah. And he fucking copped to it. He's like, sorry, my bad. Which is the best way to get past it. Yeah. That's why most people didn't notice. But
not it was tainted supplements. I had no knowledge of it. Just say you're sorry. Because when you make stuff up, it sounds like you're making up excuses.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even if it is the reason why, just say you're sorry and it's not going to happen again, and leave it at that.
Yeah.
Anyway, off my soapbox. Don't ever forget, Vince McMahon and Shawn Michaels love each other so much, in the way that only 2 gay men can love each other, and not in the way that non-gay men love each other, because that's a very different type of love, Mateo. I don't know if you knew this or not.
No, I thought all love was equal.
Well, see, now you're making me sound like an asshole. I don't mean it like that. Sure, you can love who you want, and that's equal. But the way that I love you is different than the way that Vince loves Shawn. You see what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying?
I see.
Yeah.
They love each other's souls.
No, they love each other like they want to rub penises. It's love, Mateo. This isn't just banging. There's a deep...
Well, after hearing that song, there's got to be a lot of lust coming from the McMahon side. I'm a pretty boy. I'll make your spine tingle when I'm around. That's what he said.
I'll make your butt tingle.
I'm so cute. He says that.
Yeah. Hearing Vince, oh God, I can't wait for every single one of you that have never heard this to hear this.
The unedited version will be like, your jizz tastes like watermelon and celery. It must have been so bad. I like to bounce it off my lips.
You're just you're just a sexy boy. Sexy boy. You're my boy. You're not your boy toy. No, bad boy toy, Vince McMahon. What a big show, Michaels.
Everybody out.
Everybody out. I need to take a phone call.
Just starts tugging one out in the recording booth. Sexy boy. God, everybody stopped listening long ago.
I know this joke has gone on way too long. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed our Road to Wrestlemania special, spectacular extravaganza. Extravaganza!
Oh, I gotta make that better.
Yeah,
extravaganza. No, better.
Thank you for listening to the Whatcast. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, iTunes, and YouTube. Enjoy the podcast. Get yourself a Whatcast t-shirt or a sticker pack. Who was that dude on that one episode? Try the links in Homie's page. All this and more can be found at www.thewhatcasters.com. Thanks again for listening and have a great week.